The time is at hand.
From the land of crackheads and honey, you're in dark places. This is the last show of 2025. So what I like to do on the new year and everything like that is follow Art Bell's tradition of having predictions for the upcoming year. And most of the time, the predictions are just never true. They never happen. But they're still fun. I was listening in on some of the predictions for 2025 that I did way back on episode 202. And someone predicted that there would be more AI integration. And that one, I guess, kind of came true. Because you see AI everywhere now. You know those goofy Bigfoot videos? You see AI, like he's telling a joke. He's sitting by a campfire. Stuff like that. I mean, it's fun. It's still demonic, though. I hate anything to do with AI. Someone else said that 2025 is only going to be worse than like previous years. And it was for the most part. But here are some predictions for 2026. Let's see how many of these come true. More AI everywhere. And sadly, that will probably be right. ID, age verification, will be everywhere, killing internet anonymity forever. Things are going to be very unstable around the world. 2026 will be full of record profits on paper and real stress on the ground. Corporations will keep reporting all-time high earnings to satisfy shareholders, driven by automation, AI, and aggressive cost-cutting. At the same time, many of these same companies will claim financial pressure when it comes to employees. No meaningful increments, hiring freezes, and continued layoffs in the name of efficiency. The economy stays weird, remote work keeps evolving, and nostalgia gets even stronger. I think 2026 is going to be a reset expectations kind of year. Hang in there, it's going to get worse. Red alert, raise the shields, change the phasers, and load the photon torpedoes. Trump and King Charles III will both pass away. Definitely a land conflict in Venezuela. The U.S. engine will no longer be able to hide the loss of jobs. Some sort of stimulus check. The year will start and end on a Thursday. Hey, neat. Rich people will get richer. Yeah, sadly. There will be another high-profile assassination. First, Category 5. Highly sustained cyclone. A megaquake or lesser equivalent. Bad random heat. Rain, cyclones. Global economy gets workier. Joblessness gets worse in form of mass layoffs. Some part or portion of livable landmass in Southeast Asia region will go uninhabitable. Mass floods. Amazon rainforest gets incredibly worse. The AI bubble will burst. We will collectively stop using Instagram. AI-driven cyber warfare ramping up. Rolling blackouts and massive web outages. If/when the Republicans find out they are going to lose the 2026 midterms, they will declare a national emergency that they probably created purposefully and suspend the election. That is, if they haven't rigged it successfully by then. Gotta love politics, right? It's everywhere now. Who cares about politics? Why is that always such a big driven factor in life? The left blames the right blames the left. Who cares? We're all in the same boat, and the boat is sinking. Anyway, overall, I think it's going to be an overall more relaxed year than the last few we've had. A lot of film/game industries returning to form after the train wreck that has been the last couple of years. Things will get worse before it gets better. World War III. I think we get that one every year. In Russia, a coup against Putin. Trump will get a stroke. More of 2025, but worse. That's how things are going to be from now on. And you are correct. It doesn't get better. Read Revelation. Hopefully the White House at least partially discloses what they truly know about UFOs. Not going to happen. Democrats and Republicans will resolve their differences, hold hands, and sing Kumbaya. Reaching all the way across the boundaries of space and time. The predictions, or maybe just one day while I was at work out in the parking lot, kind of bored. Something like that. But this week on the show, we have Bigfoot Encounters. For those of you not familiar with Bigfoot, he is the granddaddy of them all, the king of all cryptids. We love our Bigfoot stories around here, just like this one. An account of a deputy sheriff in Oregon that had a favorite place he went to on and off over the years. He was comfortably familiar with it and was easily accessible. One day at dusk, he dropped down over an embankment he'd been up and down many times. He turned to face the river and surprised a large male Sasquatch. It was very close. He shot back up over the embankment and started running back to his car. It followed. He made it to the car and sped away. Once he got to a safe place, he had a breakdown of emotions. I saw a Bigfoot last winter. All I saw were two black hairy legs through the brush. A couple days after the house was slapped, always in the middle of the night. This took place in Sylvania, Georgia. I live on the outskirts of town, but it's only a 10-minute drive from here to downtown. Population is approximately 2,600, a rural area, but close to downtown, which really surprised me. It got bad enough that I called the police. Nothing was found. The officer suggested game cams, which made me think he saw right through I saw legs of a man in a black ghillie suit in the brush very near to my house. I did not tell him what I thought. I did not want to be the laughingstock of town. I believe it was May 13th, 2012. I had taken a train to Olympia, Washington, and then hitchhiked the rest of the way to Westport, Washington, because I wanted to learn to surf. I'm experienced in the outdoors and hitchhike semi-regularly. Anyway, after renting a surfboard and flailing around in the water for a day, it was getting close to sunset, and I had to find a place to sleep. I found out that it was illegal to sleep on that beach, state land, but someone suggested I go down to Grayland State Park just south. Not only did I have the option of paying for a campsite, but I could also find a place to lay my stuff down. I had a ground tarp, a sleeping bag, and my wetsuit, and sleep without being bothered. Now in May, the weather is windy, and the water is freezing. Surfing was unpleasant, and this beach is pretty empty, except for a few unoccupied at the time, summer homes, etc. So that's what I did. I hitchhiked down roadway 105 to the park, decided against buying a campsite, and hiked through the woods to the beach. The wooded area between the highway and the beach is probably only a couple hundred yards deep, but the trees aren't very tall and form a thick canopy, somewhat claustrophobic. I found a couple of small landmarks, a certain rock, a beach marker with a streamer on it, to remember where my things were, and set them down. I grabbed a sandwich from my bag, and I went back to the campsite area so I could charge my cell phone in the bathroom. I was surprised at how empty the area was. There was one RV with the blinds down, and a couple fast asleep in one campsite. Otherwise, it was deserted. As I sat, disappointed that the bathroom had no electricity, I smoked a long cigar and enjoyed my time alone. Night fell. It was bedtime. I began to walk back toward my impromptu beach camp.
and realized I couldn't see a thing. The moon was relatively bright, but the wind was intense, and the forest canopy blocked any moonlight. I continued walking west through the trees with my hands out in front of me, so I didn't hit anything. At this point, I was creeped out. Dark, empty woods at night are creepy. Howling wind that covers any other sound is creepy. But I pressed on because I'm more adventurous than that. Besides, the beach was easy to find. Just walk west until you reach the Pacific. Big ocean. Can't miss it. I came out onto the beach and none of my landmarks were there. I might have gone a bit north or south. I don't know. But I thought the dim light from my cell phone screen could help me find that weird rock near the edge of the woods. I went back into the forest. Never had I thought I could be so lost in such a small area. I couldn't have been more than half a mile from my things. Yes, the woods are creepy, but I'll hang in there. Until the scream. Directly behind and to my right. The most startling "woo" I've ever heard. I jumped, swore, and began to run. I didn't know what it was, and didn't want to find out. I couldn't run too fast because I couldn't see. The noise continued, although I was getting further from it. That was encouraging. I ran a little bit faster until I slammed my left shoulder into a tree that I didn't see. Barely catching myself, I slowed down, despite the adrenaline. As I slowly walked, feeling tree trunks and trying not to trip over rocks, I remembered reading that this area contained screech owls. Those aren't scary. Eventually, I came back to the beach, wandered up and down until I found my stuff and went to sleep. Well, crap, I thought. Screech owls are startling. That was 2 summers ago. Earlier this year, after getting interested in Bigfoot, I was telling someone my story, and asked if I could send them a recording of a western screech owl, so I googled it. I couldn't actually find a recording that matched what I heard. Screech owls have several calls, but this was not one of them. Weird, I thought. And later I found out that Grace Harbor County, where I was at, has some of the highest numbers of Bigfoot reports in Washington. What I heard wasn't the famous whoop howl, but it was similar in pitch and unbelievably loud. I'd hardly call a scary noise in the wood proof of an undiscovered ape, but that's my story. Not mine, but a buddy of mine. He goes to Harry, North Carolina quite regularly and camps with her friends. One night they were all sitting around the fire in the middle of camp doing what campers do, and a rock came in at an angle. It was bigger than a golf ball and smaller than a baseball. First he thought nothing of it, and then another one came in, and his dog was starting to look off into the woods. So he picked it up and threw it back into the woods. About 5 minutes went by, and another rock came flying in. This time it was much closer to him, and about the same in size. His dog and another dog that was in there started to bark off in the direction it came from. Again he picked it up and threw it back. Then nothing happened until they went to bed. At about 2 or 3 a.m. the dogs started going crazy inside of the tent. Then they heard loud noises coming from outside. A lot of beating and banging around. Something was going through their camp. He and his friend hopped up and grabbed their guns, but were too freaked out by what was going on at the time and from earlier. When they got up in the morning, after not much sleep that night, the campsite was a mess. Can't say for sure what was there. The activity, after they went to bed, could have very well been a bear, but the rock throwing is what has me curious. The next trip out, I plan on going with them and seeing what I can find. I personally am an optimistic skeptic, and my friend did not think they were real until this happened. I'm being joined now by our cat Fluffy, so you might hear some purring in the background, but there's not really much I can do about it. And I want to get this thing recorded, so just deal with the purring. This guy says, I didn't see it, but I smelled a Bigfoot. I was riding motorcycles into Lake Shasta logging roads. I was left behind by my faster friends. I was doing about 15 or so, and boom, I was hit by a smell that hit me on a primordial level. Imagine 1,000 cab drivers plus 1,000 wet dogs rolled in crap and left to rot. It's like I knew that an apex predator was near, and my fight or flight response kicked in like it never has. Gassed it? You bet. How do I know that it wasn't a bear? You just know. I can't and won't try to explain it. If you ever encounter one, you will know exactly what I mean. I've always been an avid outdoorsman. Always hunted, always fished. I'm from Missouri, and I know what we have and what we don't have. We have a few mountain lions scattered around, and even fewer black bears. The only common things that are big and wild are deer, coyotes, and turkeys. That being said, I really enjoy deer hunting. Our farm is situated on bluffs and ridges along the Missouri River in the center of the state. And while it's actually pretty populated, the terrain is incredibly rough and hard to get around on. That being said, our acreage isn't huge, but the surface area is. All kinds of ravines, gullies, hollows, etc. It was just a few years ago when I was halfway through undergrad and went home on a weekend during bow season. So it's a half-hour drive from the house to the farm, and I show up well before daylight. And as luck would have it, I forgot my keys to my dad's box stand. We keep it locked up so the neighbors don't vandalize it. That didn't bother me much, though, because, like I said, rough terrain. It isn't hard to find a spot that sits over a game trail where I can have some elevation and cover. And I grew up around the farm, so I knew where the trails were. All I had was a pack with some stuff like a knife and a rope and tags, my bow, and a little LED flashlight. I took off down the side of the ridge and found a good spot where I could lean against a tree that overlooked a trail with some brush in front of me for cover. I figured I'd wait for the sun to come up, and a doe would come by, and I'd be home with a deer by lunchtime. I got to the spot, set down my pack, knocked an arrow, and of course, turned my light off. Got there probably too early, and there was no sign of daylight yet, especially considering how thick the woods are. I had been standing there for a half hour, maybe 45 minutes, and then I heard a pack of coyotes. Like I said, not unusual. We have those. What I didn't like was that I was on the ground with only a bow in the dark, and the yips and howls were getting closer. It would be a real pain to accidentally surprise a pack of coyotes like that. I've never heard of them bothering people, but you know how surprised animals freak out. So I was getting ready to maybe arrow a coyote, was listening intently to where they were. As they came closer, I noticed something bigger was with them. My initial thought was that they were chasing a deer. I could hear leaves like crazy and some limbs snapping and stuff like that. Once again, that all makes sense. I had decided that it was a big deer, maybe two of them together. They were really tearing up the leaves as they came, and the yipping and howling was right there with them. They must have passed me maybe 30 or 40 yards further down the hillside. Went right on without noticing me at all. They were in a heck of a hurry too. Before I could even think of estimating the time, I had lost the sound of the coyotes in the ravines and woods. So I kinda eased up then. Probably wasn't going to have to shoot anything for a while, if anything came around at all. And right then, when I was relaxed, I heard this whoop coming from right behind me. I don't think I've ever jumped up, spun around, and drawn a bow so fast. Of course, you can't handle a bow and light at the same time, so I was stuck there in the dark with something whooping right behind me, with only a bow. You can imagine I was a little tense. After about a minute, I let off the draw, but I kept my release on the string. I didn't move for another hour. not till I could see a ways without a light. After the sun came up enough, I walked out very slowly and kept looking behind me. Got to the truck and went home. I was totally done hunting for the weekend. A friend of mine and I were hiking not far from downtown Salt Lake City in July 2014. After a while, we decided to rest a bit. It was around 5:15 p.m. Since the trail was narrow and crowded with bush, we left the trail to rest under some very tall fir trees, where the bushes were less thick, but it was still shady. July in Salt Lake is close to 100 degrees. As I was leaning on a stump, I noticed that we were standing among several trees that formed a teepee shape. As we were noticing and discussing it, I heard a loud crash, and then a twig snap a few yards in front of me. My back was to the trail, so I was facing a hillside in deeper forest growth, while my friend was facing the trail with his back toward the hillside. The trees in the teepee formation were to my right about 10 feet, and where my friend was facing them in the trail. So my head was turned about 90 degrees when I heard the commotion coming from the base of the hillside. I immediately looked toward the sound and saw a hominid covered with dark brown hair moving quickly behind the thick bushes. He wasn't more than 6-ish feet tall, and I didn't get a good look at his face because he turned to move so quickly. I noticed that his hair was two-toned, with the darker hair on his head and shoulders and the lighter hair on his midriff. His legs appeared darker. I shouted, "Did you see that?" to my friend, while trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Last time I saw someone tromping through the bushes in that area was in early spring. There were 2 ex-country skiers coming back down the mountain. The one in front was wearing a blue jacket with a typical two-tone dark gray shoulder pattern. So for some reason, it was the first explanation that my brain could come up with for what I was seeing. I mean, I could clearly recall a hairy creature, but at the same time my brain was refusing to believe it. I was trying to come up with a scenario for the situation. All I could muster was a skier hiking through the forest in July. Not on the trail, but fully dressed in dark ski clothes from head to toe. In July. At any rate, I then began to call out, "Hello, hey, hello," while also trying to listen for the direction of his retreat between my calls. My friend ran up to the spot to see if he could see anything. He had only seen a blur by the time he had turned all the way around to see what had made the sound, so he wasn't sure what we were looking for. Even though it was only a few short yards to the spot where I saw our skier, there was nothing there. I regained my senses and ran to see if there were any tracks. I found one, but it resembled more of the kind of print you'd find in deep sand, more of a dugout type of depression in the needles. I measured it from side to side, and it was about 1 inch longer and wider on each side than the size 11 Chaco sandals I was wearing. I hadn't heard any crashing through the bushes after the initial noise that grabbed my attention, so I was unable to determine what had happened to the skier after it had passed behind the bushes. There were some green plants covering the ground in the direction he went, but they were only compressed and then quickly ran out to the edge of a very small and gentle ravine running back up the hill. We scanned for tracks, but I didn't feel like pursuing into the deeper brush or up the ravine, so we went back to the trail. Oddly, neither of us felt threatened in the least, and although the valley we were hiking up was very narrow, we just continued up the trail in the same direction our furry friend had gone. We thought we heard movement up the hillside a few times and from various directions, but still never felt threatened. After an hour or so of high awareness hiking, we turned back so we wouldn't get caught up there after sundown. After giving it some thought, I found it highly suspicious that the creature had absconded so quickly through the brush without any noise except the initial crash. I wonder now if the noise was a deliberate attempt to get our attention, not as a trap, but rather as an alert. A sort of, hey, we're here. Please respect our space. I'm never going to hike there alone again, that's for sure. But I'm definitely going back up there with a friend or two. I'd like to look for more indications of an individual or family group. If a group has moved in, I'd like to know. Otherwise, I might assume it was just a male passing through. Back in 2014, my boyfriend went to take the dogs out back. My one dog started barking like crazy right away. My boyfriend had a flashlight and quickly scanned the grass line where the woods start, where we normally see deer. Our house is bordered by woods. Something made him shine a bit higher, and he sees two eyes staring back at him, about 9 feet off the ground. As my boyfriend tries to hurry the dogs back inside, he sees the thing turn and casually walk back into the woods, like a man, with arms and shoulders. I've never seen my boyfriend so freaked out. He came inside and closed every single window and all the blinds, and refuses to let the dogs go in the backyard at night anymore. In hindsight, there have been a few instances in the past weeks that we can't explain, like dogs' toys being thrown into the woods with bites taken out. But it was the placement of the toys and whatnot that makes us wonder. Also a grunt/snort noise we heard recently. My boyfriend cannot get over the size of this thing, and the fact that the eyes were so high off the ground. I asked him if he thought he saw a Bigfoot. He said after a minute or so of silence, "If I wasn't a believer before, I sure am now." We moved away the next summer, but just moved back into the house on June 1st. I put up a trail cam in the backyard, but I've yet to get anything on it. We live in the upper peninsula of Michigan, near the Michigan-Wisconsin border. My uncle just got back from an elk hunting trip near Ukiah, Oregon. He says that one night he was headed back to camp in the dark when a 25-pound rock was thrown at him, almost hitting his head. The next morning he went back to the site and found some tracks in the mud. He wanted to keep following them, but got a bad feeling, so went back inside. I got this story through my dad, who my uncle contacted once he got back from the trip. I have not talked to my uncle directly. However, my dad has been pestering him, wondering if it's real or not. Knowing my uncle, staging a hoax is not something he would do, nor does have any reason to. My friend and I went to hike Ice Lake in Silverton, Colorado. It's a fairly rough trail with many hatchbacks and rocky surfaces and high inclines. It took us about 3 hours to reach the top. We met many backpackers and hikers on the way up, and many settled on the top. We sat at the lake for a good 10 minutes before realizing the clouds were getting darker and started descending the mountain. We were the last hikers to go down the trail, as many were just backpackers that camped near the lake. To help you visualize, this hiking trail had about 5 levels, one being the base level of aspen trees. Second was a small valley that was fairly easy to walk through. Third was a deep forest with a heavy incline. Fourth was a larger valley with a creek. Fifth was the top with the lake. As we were descending, we passed the 5th and 4th levels quietly before reaching the 3rd. Our legs were tired, and we decided to sit down on a log. Before sitting down, my friend heard this large growl. I thought it was an owl hooting. We decided to let that thought go. Well, as we sat down, we heard coyotes yipping up near the entrance of the 3rd level. We weren't exactly scared, but I had my dog with me. I didn't want him to get hunted or attracted by some coyotes, so we got up and started walking down quickly. This went on for about 15 minutes, and we decided to slow our pace, as they were far away now. We made it to the middle area of the 3rd level and began talking again. The coyotes are still yapping away. After about 5 minutes of this, we kind of stopped because we noticed the forest go silent, with the hairs on our body standing up. A few seconds later, we heard a large whoop sound like a primate would make at a zoo. I looked back at my friend to ask what it was. probably the most scared voice I can talk with, and she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Run." Our fight or flight response kicked in immediately, and we were flying down the hatchbacks. I was thinking of every possible animal it could be, but nothing seemed to match, from what I've heard. Kept looking up to see if I could see what it was, but there was nothing, even though plenty of branches were breaking above us, and that honestly is the scariest feeling I've ever had. We booked it down to the 3rd level while hearing branches snapping above us, which only fueled our adrenaline more. I think we went down 2.5 levels in about 30 minutes, which would have taken us about 2 hours to get up. I made it to the bottom, and she stopped to feel some of the aspen trees. I turned around to see if she was okay, and I just see her running down the hill because she heard more branches breaking behind us. We got in the car and started talking about it. We figured it was an animal, like a marmot or a grouse, maybe even a moose, but after reviewing the sounds, no animal sounds native to that area were clicking with what we heard, because it was like a primate sound. We think it was a Bigfoot, but can't say exactly for sure. We also figured that there will be other hikers that were joking around, but there were coyotes up there, so we let that option go as well. Hear a lot of that. Sasquatches tend to roam around with coyotes for some reason. I don't get it. But that's about all of the scary Bigfoot encounters I have for you this week. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a happy new year. We'll see you again next time. God bless.